We had some technical difficulties at the beginning of the presentation that we removed, so rather than cut in and out as we were talking about it, we are going directly when we'll starts.
Okay, Will, you're all up, buddy.
All right. Well, y'all, once again, I appreciate the patience with me tonight. The jokes do write themselves. There is a reason I am paid to talk about the rocket and write about the rocket and not actually build the rocket. And that is a very good thing. We have a tremendous national asset in the Space Launch System. We're going to get into it and what we're doing to return people to the moon. I first want to show you a couple of pictures, partly because they're cool and partly because they help tell a little bit more of the story. I am a second-generation NASA team member. My dad's been here at Marshall Space Flight Center for coming up on 50 years now. The man loves the space program more than anybody I've ever met in my life and is the biggest nerd about it. So getting to be a second generation is incredible. He actually helped test parts of SLS before Artemis 1, and getting to be a part of it is just a blessing. The picture there on the right, you can see a couple of my teammates. I'm a technical writer and communication strategist, so they pay me to know the rocket inside and out and to be able to communicate it. And along with my teammates, we get to do that. One of the things we did with Artemis 1 is we listened to all the communication loops. And when we did fly November of 2022, we had to go out and see the launch pad afterwards just to really prove that it was actually gone. And you can see that empty launch pad and a little bit of the charring there in the background. So let's talk about what we're doing. December of 1972, Gene Cernan and Jack Schmitt were preparing to leave the moon. End of Apollo 17 and the end of the Apollo lunar landing missions were here. But as they left, Gene said, "We leave as we came, and God willing, as we will return, with peace and hope for all mankind." And it's taken us a few more years than we had hoped to go back, but we are indeed about to go back. Before we can take those boots, we had to do an incredible and important uncrewed test flight. So let's take a look, and hopefully the audio will play.
Our return to the moon will be different than the last time. We plan
to if it's not, let me know.
The Space Launch System is now counting down.
It's playing.
Bryan on its maiden voyage to the moon. And here we go. And hydrogen burn off igniters initiate. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters and engines. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
We are all part of something incredibly special.
I might have just screwed that up.
The first launch of Artemis.
This view of Earth from a human-rated spacecraft not seen since 1972 during the final Apollo missions.
Distant retrograde orbit. We're going to be about 38,000 miles away from the lunar surface. We're going beyond anywhere we ever went for Apollo.
The Orion spacecraft is barreling its way back home after circumnavigating the moon and beyond in an elliptical distant retrograde orbit. Splashdown. Orion back on Earth.
Y'all, no joke. I have seen that video, I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of times. And every time it gets me, I'll sit here getting teary-eyed. That was an absolutely incredible mission. 25 and a half days to over 1.4 million miles traveled to the moon so we can test out the spacecraft, test out SLS. I'm going to tell you about how well we did here in a minute, but it's a very real thing. We are returning to the moon, and this time we're going to do it differently because this time we're going to stay. We're going to go build a permanent, sustainable presence on the lunar surface and in lunar orbit and learn what we can both from a scientific perspective about the moon as well as from a technology perspective, so then we can then go on to Mars. We're doing it under the name of Artemis, the twin sister of Apollo, the goddess of the moon. It's only fitting that we take her name as we make these next voyages. Mars is the goal, and the moon is an important step to that. We will make it happen. But why? Why are we spending our taxpayer dollars and our resources to do this exploration? Well, we could talk about it all night, and my wife has listened to me talk about it for way longer than she probably ever wants to. But we can really bucket into three different areas. Science. I come from a scientific background. I have studied Mars geology when I was in grad school. And the moon, to me, is the archive of the early solar system. Geologic activities that happen and bombardments that happened billions of years ago that the Earth and Mercury and whatever the heck's going on Venus, they've all erased it. The moon really preserved a lot of that. So by going and studying the moon, we can learn a lot about how the early solar system formed. We can learn a lot about how the early sun was and how the sun has evolved. I'll get more into the science later because I'm a giant nerd. American leadership. We want to lead and explore space with the principles of the free world. And being as the American resources doing it, a lot of countries that want to participate but maybe don't have the resources to, we can be a vehicle for them to participate, and we can then take advantage of their expertise and their knowledge and their ideas about how to explore. And then inspiration. This may be the easiest one to get across when you see a video of the moon up close like that. But when people do great things, they inspire other people to do great things. The Apollo generation not just inspired the space shuttle and the international generations for us here at NASA, but they inspire people to be doctors and scientists and teachers. When we do great things and we do them together, we're inspiring other people to do them as well. But why do we need the moon? Well, we look at these three main areas of where human exploration either is or will be soon. We look at low Earth orbit, the International Space Station, 250 miles up. We can get there and get back in about 3 hours, have to slow down from 17,500 miles an hour on reentry. It's not easy. We've made it look easy, but it's really not. But compared to the other places we want to go, it's still not easy. We look at the moon, we're 1,000 times further than the International Space Station. 3 days to get there, 3 days to get back, depending on how much propellant we burn. Having to slow down from almost 25,000 miles an hour. But when we look at Mars, we are talking a completely different ballgame. 40 million miles at its closest. With current in-space propulsion, we're looking at 6 to 9 months just to get there. And if you do your trans-Martian injection burn and something happens, you're not hitting the next exit and turn around and coming home. So we have to make sure that our hardware, our astronauts, our teams on the ground, and all of our processes are as robust as they can be. And that's what brings us back to the moon. I like to get outdoors. I like to hike. Appalachian Trail is about 130 miles for me, roughly about the same for y'all there in Raleigh. If I'm going to go hike the Appalachian Trail, the first time I'm taking my tent out and spending a night in it, and I'm hiking in my boots, it's not going to be when I get to my first trailhead to start day one of hiking the Appalachian Trail. I'm going to go do some of the stuff in my backyard. And that's what the moon affords us. It's our celestial backyard where we can test technologies and refine those processes before we make that giant leap out to Mars. And our destination is the lunar South Pole. During the Apollo missions, we stayed mostly equatorial. There was one that got a little north of the equator, but for the most part, very equatorial. Our destination is very southern polar. You can see these are a variety of different landing sites that are under consideration for our first landing. And you can see the lunar South Pole there in the center. One of the intriguing parts of the lunar South Pole, and really our big reason for going there, is the presence of water ice. We have a lot of data that indicate that there is significant amounts, and I use that term relatively, of water ice there. And water ice for us exploring is both for the astronauts to keep them healthy and happy, but it's also rocket fuel. So we are heading to the lunar South Pole. One of the fascinating things, though, is that it's going to look drastically different. When we look at these beautiful Apollo missions and these photos from those missions, we have really high sun angles. We can see a lot. When we go down to lunar South Pole, those lighting conditions are drastically different. That sun angle is really low, and as a result, it's going to cast some really, really long shadows. Dr. David Kring with the Lunar Planetary Institute did a talk, I guess about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, about how it'll look different. And here at Marshall Space Flight Center over on the flat floor, which is the lab my dad built and continues to work on now, they are doing some lighting tests so we can understand just what those shadows are like and how our astronauts can overcome the challenges of working in them and working through them. When we look at some of the scientific objectives, we want to understand the planetary processes. How did planetary bodies accrete? How do they evolve? How do they form and change and undergo manipulation, whether it's impacts or internal volcanism, everything like that? We can study that with the moon. Let's understand the volatiles that are there. Where did that water ice come from? Was it impact derived? Is it from the sun? Is there some internal outgassing that happened billions of years ago on the moon from the internal magma on the moon? Let's study how the Earth-Moon system formed. Will the impact formation theory, will that hold up when we get down there and get some more samples on the lunar South Pole? We can study the record of the lunar sun. This is one that I think is really fascinating. During the Apollo samples, they collected these volcanic glass beads, and inside those beads were volatiles and the signatures of the early sun. So we can study the different isotopes. We can understand what the sun was like 3.5, 4 billion years ago. And then, of course, understanding the different unique environments that we're going to be in, and then understanding and mitigating those exploration risks. The moon is not easy to explore, and we've got a lot to learn about how to do it safely. And part of that is going to be our technology objectives. We need to understand how to live off the land. If we're going to go to Mars and do these long duration missions, we need to understand how to mitigate the dust. How do we generate the power? What happens when our power source gets covered up with lunar regolith? Does it overheat? Does it not? How do we work in these extreme temperature environments, the lunar night, for example? All of that we're going to be able to test when we're just a few miles away from here on Earth and having a good communication delay. We need a lot of stuff to do it. And this chart just shows you kind of a snapshot of the really high level pieces. We need a heavy lift rocket to carry our astronauts and to carry our cargoes there. That's the Space Launch System. We're going to talk about it. We need a spacecraft to carry the astronauts off of Earth's surface through space to our destination and then to bring them home. We've got the Orion spacecraft. And then I'm going to go down here to the bottom left row. As much as we love launching Orion and SLS, we can't do it if we can't tank the vehicle and prepare the systems for launch. So we have our exploration ground systems. Those three elements are really the first three that we're exercising on Artemis 1, exercise on Artemis 1 and are exercising on Artemis 2. When we get to Artemis 3, we need our human landing system. We need our evolved spacesuits. And as we continue to build up our stays there and build up the complexity of these missions, we're going to need things like increased surface mobility, like you're basically an ATV for the moon. Those are in development and competition right now. We need the surface infrastructure so that we can generate the power, collect all the samples, and have successful missions. And then as everything sits right now, we are still planning on building what we call the Gateway, which is kind of our waypost out there in lunar orbit where we can do continual science year-round whether astronauts are there or not. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Well, Mars is really far away, and we want to go there. So we're doing this as a coalition. We have the Artemis Accords. 55 countries have signed on and said, we want to explore space with the principles that the United States and the free world are exploring space with. Let's take a look. So some of those principles, transparency and interoperability. We want to be transparent. What are we doing? How are we doing it? Interoperability, absolutely critical. I'll give you an example. My wife and I went to rode bikes through England last summer. It was just awesome. But if I didn't take the adapter, I wasn't going to be able to charge my phone at night, which means I wasn't going to get my pictures during the next day. Interoperability, making sure that things can plug in, that they dock, that everything works together is absolutely critical when we're building things like the Gateway. We're building our landers that require assets from multiple sources. Emergency assistant, of course, we want to know if something happens that somebody else is going to come help us and get our astronauts back. Release the scientific data. We're not going to silo up this data and keep it just for ourselves and save all of that. And we're going to release that. Let's let everybody study it so that everybody benefits from that. And then you can see a few of the other ones that are important as well. Let's talk about the backbone. SLS. This is my baby. I love this rocket, and I love it because it's an incredible vehicle. SLS is the only rocket in the world with the power and capability required to send astronauts out into deep space in a single launch. And Orion's the only spacecraft that can take care of the astronauts out in deep space environments for those long durations and return them safely, slowing down from that 25,000 miles an hour and bringing them back safely. And we say this is a national capability. The reality of it is that SLS and Orion belong to you as much as they do to me. This is America's rocket, America's spacecraft, and America's space program. You can see there 3,800 suppliers in every single state, over 60,000 workers, and we have international countries working with us even on these first flights. This is our space program. This is our rocket. This belongs to us. Let's take a look. This is what we call the expanded chart. And some of y'all may have seen this before, and if you have, my apologies, but I love this chart because we can talk about this vehicle. Right there in the center, you can see the core stage. 212 feet long, weighs 188,000 pounds empty without the engines. This was our big new development. While we do use a lot of shuttle heritage hardware that we've upgraded for the flight, the core stage was really our big new development. While it retains the same diameter as the space shuttle external tank and we use liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, that's really about where the similarities end. Instead of having an orbiter off the side of like we did with the external tank, we move our 4 RS-25 engines, former Space Shuttle main engines, upgraded for this flight. We move them to the bottom of our fuel tanks or of our propellant tanks, which means they're in a new thermal environment. They've got super cold right above them, and then they've got 2 solid rocket boosters right beside them. So we've had to upgrade those. We upgraded their computers. RS-25 is just a remarkable engine. Those solid rocket boosters, they pack a punch. On Space Shuttle, we used 4 propellant segments. On the SLS, we're using 5. We went from 3.3 million pounds of thrust per booster to 3.6. Absolutely beast of SLS. Moving up the rocket, we have the launch vehicle stage adapter. That piece is built by Teledyne Brown just about a mile down the road from where I'm sitting right now. While it may look small, that piece alone is bigger than a 2-story house. And it's actually a fascinating piece of equipment. We have the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. This is our upper stage for the first 3 flights. Built about 20 miles down the road from me by United Launch Alliance. Using an RL-10 engine, an engine that has been a critical part of the spaceflight industry since the 60s. And then we have the Orion stage adapter, that tiny piece up there. About 5 feet tall. Once again, just built about a mile down the road. While it's small, it's really has an important job because along with connecting the spacecraft element to what we consider the rocket, it's also where we carry our secondary payloads, our CubeSats. And on Artemis 2, we are going to be carrying 4 12U CubeSats from our international partners. Above that, we get into the spacecraft element. You can see the service module. That's built by Airbus under a partnership with the European Space Agency. Components come from U.S. states as well as 10 European countries for that piece alone. We have the crew module where our astronauts will ride, and then we have the launch abort system, which I affectionately call the uh-oh stick. And I call it that way because that means if we have to fire it, my rocket did something it wasn't supposed to do. We've tested it out. It performs great on ground tests. Hopefully we never have to use it in flight. So we saw the video of Artemis 1. Let's talk about how we did. I get to talk with our chief engineer a lot. He's a great guy, a terrific pilot, and just we could not ask for a better chief engineer. When we were going through the Artemis 1 data, he pointed out a few things that were important to him as the chief engineer for measuring success. And that first one is orbital insertion velocity. How well did we predict the energy that we would get out of the system? You can see the first time we flew, we did within 6.58 feet per second of dead perfect zero. Our RS-25 engine shut off 40 milliseconds sooner than we predicted, or 1 frame of data. It gives us an accuracy of 99.974% accurate. Our orbital insertion altitude, our apogee was predicted to be 975 nautical miles. We did 972.6 the first time we ever flew. And historically speaking, rockets have about a 50-50 shot of failure the first time they fly. So for us to be able to perform like this proves that SLS just did its job with an incredible degree of precision. Talking about the elements, we'll take a closer look into them. That core stage being 212 feet long, it has 45 miles of cabling inside of it, 999 sensors, and they all did their job just incredibly well. The engine section alone, which is that white piece you can see at the bottom end of it, 18 miles of cabling by itself, and everything functioned as expected. The RS-25s, we love those engines. We've got more than 1 million seconds of experience, both hot fire and flight experience with them. They performed many parameters within 2% of pre-flight predictions. Solid rocket boosters, you're going to see a test from one of our qualification tests here. We've flown the solid rocket boosters for 135 space shuttle flights and now 1 full SLS flight. The pair that we flew on Artemis 1 were the closest match pair that we've ever flown, including through all 135 space shuttle flights. They burned out within 0.4 of a second of each other and performed within 0.25% of each other. They performed remarkably well. I love this video on the left. So y'all have to excuse me if I nerd out. This is an internal shot of separation, the ICPS, and it's RL-10 pushing Orion. At that point, we're 1,000 miles in altitude. ICPS did its job just outstanding. What's really cool about this flight is that we had to burn the RL-10 for 18 minutes. Now, once again, RL-10 has been in the spaceflight industry since the 60s. We were talking to the ULA team, and they're like, we've never burned the RL-10 for that long. We're like, oh, you mean in space? They're like, no, ever. And it was dead on bullseye for it. And then, of course, none of the smoke and fire happens if you don't have the flight software telling it what to do. Our flight software just aced the test. We have a full-scale mock-up in the building right beside the one I'm sitting in right now, where we actually place all of the boxes in their flight configuration, and we're able to run through all the flight software, and we fly this vehicle virtually thousands of times before we even start stacking the vehicle on the launch pad. The flight software it's the hero of SLS. And for those of you who are coding fans, to give you an idea, a normal car has about 1.5 million lines of code. We fly SLS with 50,000 lines of code. Simple, effective, does the job. When we looked at the data from Artemis 1, we came back and said, we're tested, we're proven, we are ready to commit our astronauts.
It was a mission of historical significance. The dawn of a new era of human exploration. A staggering success for a new generational vehicle. It was symmetry in motion. Artemis 1 was a moment in time, but it was not the beginning. Built on the shoulders of Saturn, Apollo, and Shuttle, forged through determination, grit, and sacrifice, by a team challenged to pave new paths through the solar system.
Today, I'm pleased to announce that NASA has selected the design of its new deep space system that will take American astronauts further into space than any nation has gone before.
This is what's going to send us back further into space than we've ever gone before.
We are going to take the lead, and we're going to take a coalition of nations to go to the moon, this time to stay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the world's most powerful rocket ever.
We share a bond. We did it together. We had trained. We had tested. We were ready to fly.
Artemis 1 launched the moment in time.
But it was not the end. We are just getting started.
And here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire.
Give you all a little rocket fuel for the evening. How's about that? So we actually, side note about that video, we reached out to Metallica and said, hey, we want to use your song for this video. What do y'all think? And they jumped on board, recently renewed the agreement. They've been terrific to work with, and we love playing the video. So let's meet the crew. And if y'all happen to hear a rumbling in the background, I would apologize, but that is actually a Blue Origin engine that's being test fired down at the south end of the arsenal. So if you happen to hear that, that is a real rocket engine test. Well, let's meet the crew. This is truly an awesome crew. They've got a 10-day mission ahead of them to test out the Orion spacecraft. We have Jeremy Hansen, our mission specialist. Jeremy's going to be making his first space flight. Royal Canadian Air Force fighter pilot. Jeremy has done a 7-day mission in the caves in Italy as a research station. He's done 6 days in NASA's Nemo facility off the Florida Keys. Guy is 6'4" and truly an awesome, awesome person. Reed Wiseman is our commander. Reed is former chief of the astronaut office, has more than 168 days in space. Former Navy F-18 pilot, and for any of you aviation nerds like me, he also flew the F-14 Tomcat, which I'm incredibly jealous of. Victor Glover, he's the poet of the mission, another naval aviator, flew F-18s. He's flown so many different types of aircraft, 168 days in space on the International Space Station. A truly, truly terrific person. If you ever get to see him, that smile will light up the entire room. And then Christina Cook, someone y'all probably might be a little familiar with there in Raleigh, the mission specialist or other mission specialist. She is the engineer by trade. She is the boss of the mission. Christina is an NC State grad and a Space Camp alumni, much like Anna there. So she is going to be an absolutely critical part of this entire crew. And y'all, they're just one of the humblest, excited crews. If you are on social media, make sure you check out on Instagram. Weekly, Reed Wiseman does a weekly crew update, about a minute-long video that are awesome to listen to. Just a couple months ago, they finally unveiled their patch. We've been waiting for it for so long, and they nailed it. Because they looked at Artemis 2, A2, and said, this is all of us. We are going for all of us. And so they designed a patch to represent just that. Let's take a look at their flight plan. We're going to launch that at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We're going to go into a high Earth orbit, do a couple of raise burns, and ultimately put Orion in a 24-hour orbital period. They're going to be about 38,000 miles in apogee. And what we want to do is test out the Orion spacecraft in the life support systems while we're still in Earth orbit. So if something looks a little funky and we don't feel comfortable, we can do a deorbit burn and come home before we're heading out to the moon. One of the cool things that we get to do during that test flight is we're giving the astronauts the keys to Daddy's car. We're going to let them and have them do a test drive of the Orion spacecraft. So once we do our final burn, which will set them on the trajectory to have that high apogee orbit, we're going to separate the spacecraft from the upper stage, and they're going to fly patterns around it using different targets that we've installed on the upper stage and on the Orion stage adapter. So they'll actually be able to collect manual handling characteristics so that when on Artemis 3, Artemis 4, we need to go dock with the lander, we know how Orion flies. Now, they're especially excited about that phase of the mission. After they complete that, about 25 hours into flight, the Orion service module will perform what we call the translunar injection burn, give us that final kick so that we can go out to the moon. We're going to do what we call a free return trajectory. If you've ever seen the movie Apollo 13, think that kind of return. We're going to fly out in front of the moon. We're going to let its gravity capture us and slingshot us back to Earth and splash down about 10 days after launch off the coast of California. So where are we standing with the mission? How's everything going? Everything's going great. You can see a lot of green here on the screen. Everything is stacked for SLS with the exception of the Orion stage adapter up top. Not quite ready for it. The piece is done. We're going to be shipping it down to Kennedy Space Center here in about a month. And that will be the last piece to go up. We'll stack Orion this fall, do some integrated testing, do a tanking test, and then we'll be ready to fly early next year. We've already started a lot of the integrated testing, what we call ITCO. We're NASA, we like our acronyms, so EGS, ITCO, Exploration Ground Systems Integrated Test and Checkout. We've already got the first couple of tests done. Number 8 there, working on solid rocket boosters. That testing is ongoing right now, and we're progressing on through. So this video doesn't have any sound, so you're going to have to listen to my voice, so my apologies for that. But this is a video of stacking where we're at. The solid rocket boosters are manufactured out in Utah. We ship them by rail down to Kennedy Space Center, and then we stack them segment by segment. This takes a couple of months. We use the cranes, stack one each segment at a time as we move up the stack. We do have that iconic worm, so for any of you worm fans, we are keeping the worm on SLS. And then we get up to the nose cones, the thrustums. We got booster separation motors on there, which push them away from the stack when we separate. That gigantic core stage, 212 feet long. You know, if you've ever been in the VAB, near the VAB, it is an absolutely ginormous building. And that is a scientific term. You can quote me on that. It's the only way to describe that building. We'll lower the core stage down. Actually, as we were lowering it, we actually had to pull the boosters out a little bit and to get us that clearance that we need to get the core stage in. And then we reset them and attach them to the core stage. That launch vehicle stage adapter goes up, taller than a 2-story house. Lots of cool acoustic blankets inside. I was recently inside the LBSA-3, and I was really fascinated with all the really beauty inside. And then here comes our upper stage. That nozzle is an extendable one, so you can see it in its stowed configuration. If you see there's 2 rings, there's a reason that nozzle extends. That saves us some vertical space. And that's where we currently sit as far as the vehicle being stacked. Orion is being fueled in a building nearby the VAB. The OSA, like I said, will be going down here shortly. We'll load it up with our secondary payloads, and we'll be ready to fly early next year. But we're not just working on one vehicle. We have a lot of hardware in flow for a lot of missions. Significant progress is being made on Artemis 3, Artemis 4, and Artemis 5 and beyond. Y'all, the reality of it is we're going. This is not just a paper dream that, hey, it'd be cool to go back to the moon. We are actually doing it. Here within about 2 years, we'll be able to walk out at night or in the middle of the day and look up and go, there's people walking there right now. I cannot wait for that feeling. And if you want to be involved, there's all kinds of ways that y'all can be involved now. I always want to tell people, I don't care what your interest, I don't care what your skill set is. If you're passionate and you want to come be a part of NASA, we need people. We have the Artemis Student Challenges, including NASA Student Launching Human Exploration Rover Challenge. If you know any middle school, high school, college students, or if you happen to be one, check these out. These are hosted right here in Huntsville. I am biased. I got to do the broadcast for both of them for a few years, and they're just truly terrific experiences to understand what the engineering process is. And then you get to build a rocket or build a rover. It's pretty cool stuff. There's different kinds of college and high school internship opportunities, work with a wide variety of different mentors. And then the career paths. And this goes for whether you are in school or whether you are well through your career. We need everybody. We need the engineers, the scientists, and the astronauts. But we also need the people who can build the stuff. We need the welders. We need the plumbers. We need the electricians. All of those skills are critically important. But we also need the artists and the writers. My team that I work with, we have videographers, we have graphic artists, we have the pieces that make everything come to life. And of course, we need the accountants, the contract specialists to make sure that all the paperwork gets done properly so we can go play with the fun toys. So whatever it is you're interested in, it requires all of us to make these dreams happen. We came in peace, and we're going back for all of humanity, and we're doing it now. So with that, I'm going to put up our social media handles. Y'all feel free to follow us if you're not already. And if there's time, I'd love to answer some questions and have a discussion. And thank you all again for your time.
Were you getting all those claps?
Yes, sir. I sure appreciate it. Y'all, I wish I could be there in person because I happen to love North Carolina. So hopefully next time I can come up.
Okay. That was awesome. One more time, guys.
I appreciate that, y'all.
All right. 1 second. Sorry. We got to switch over, Will, from yours. Does anybody have questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I'm very sorry.
Will, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. The question I had has to do more with, let's say, Artemis 3. Where are we in terms of an actual lander? I know you mentioned a lot of the other equipment, and especially on Artemis 2, how things are stacking up and all the hardware. But is there anything you can share in terms of where we stand with the Artemis 3 lander?
Yeah, so I can't give you anything that you're really not seeing already, because that's about where the extent of my knowledge is. SpaceX has a very interesting and really fascinating development program that they're going through, and so they're working through that, working through Starship, and they're making progress, and hopefully they'll be ready in time for that. They tend to be one like they'll have some challenges and they'll overcome them and they'll be sprinting again. So we absolutely need them to be successful, and we're pulling for them so that we can have that great lander and go get us on the surface again. So I'm excited about it, and it's cool. You can never watch a SpaceX launch and not be like, man, that's boring. It's always cool to watch what they do and what they've come up with.
Anybody else have any questions?
See one there in the chat.
Hi, I'm doubling down on thank you for this presentation. That last building where that assembly was going on,
yes, sir.
Did you say how large that building was? Because I didn't quite get that.
Yes, so let me see if I can remember. I was just looking at the fact off the top of my head. It is the largest, so it's considered a single-story building, 525 feet tall, and I want to say it's 8 acres. But once I stop sharing my screen, I can pull up. I think it's 8 acres under one roof. And I'll give you another measurement. It's one of my favorites to use. If you look at the American flag on the side of the VAB, and then you look at the blue star field of that blue star field is the size of an NBA basketball court. So that'll give you kind of an idea of the size of it. It's got 4 high bays in there as well as the transfer aisle. We use the mobile launcher with SLS is in high bay 3 right now, and then we've converted high bay 2 to be a vertical workstation. I'll try to get you some numbers. It's a tremendously large building, and it has its own weather. And when you look at the doors, those take 45 minutes to raise and lower. So I hope that gives you an idea of its size.
Okay. Well, Will, we got a couple of questions on the chat. Dr.
Excellent.
Amy wants to know, how confident is NASA about the Artemis 2 launch staying on schedule?
Yeah, Artemis 2 is making a lot of great progress. We're saying we are no later than April, and we are hoping to be able to actually pull that up to February. So things are going really well down at Kennedy, fueling Orion, stacking SLS, and getting the testing. Ultimately, once you get out to the pad, you can see weather could slow us down. We could have something happen with hydrogen, because hydrogen, as great as it is, can be persnickety as a propellant. But I feel very confident about that, and our leadership feels very confident about April. But really, I would say February is looking pretty good from my understanding.
So I think I'm going to combine 3 statements that are in the chat right now. Ellen is asking, is this project independent of our government? And she wants to know, would there be no cut in funding? And Dr. Amy wanted to put her question into context. Given cuts to federal funding, NASA science, how confident are you about the staying on schedule with those statements?
So yeah, the funding is an interesting world that we're looking at right now. It's hard to read right now. What I'll say is that we have enjoyed significant support from both houses of Congress across the aisles, from multiple White House administrations. I don't know ultimately where things are going to land. I can tell you from watching recent activities in the Senate that I'm optimistic. I've been optimistic. The president's budget request is a request. It's the starting point. So we're still pretty early on in the process to understanding it. Artemis 2, I have no concerns about funding. Artemis 3, we are committed to that. Beyond that, we'll just have to see where everything shakes out. The best thing we can do is go show everybody what this rocket can truly do, because it is a national asset. It belongs to the taxpayers as NASA's premier launch vehicle. And we'll go fly this mission. We'll go get Reed, Jeremy, Victor, and Christina around the moon. And we'll have everybody wanting to make sure that our funding stays around. So I'm optimistic.
Okay.
This new Artemis rocket, is it about the same size, or is it any bigger than the classic Saturn V rocket?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I'm a child of the space program. I love the Saturn V. To give you, so we stand in this first configuration, we stand about 40 feet shorter than Saturn V. Saturn V was 363 feet tall, weighed 6.5 million pounds at launch, fully fueled, and produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust. With what we call Block 1, we are standing 322 feet tall, but we weigh less, and we're about 750,000 pounds less than Saturn V, and we produce more than 1 million pounds more thrust. Everything continues as we have it laid out. We will have configurations coming online with Artemis 4 and beyond that will be right about the same height as the Saturn V. And it's funny, I'll go over to the Space and Rocket Center periodically and talk to some of the Apollo guys, and they're like, "You guys cheat. You use solids." We're like, "Yup, we do." Solids. Once you light them, you're going somewhere, but they pack a heck of a punch, and we love them for it.
Anything else online or in the room?
And Amy, I see your comment. Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way to keep an eye on everything is just watch our social media channels. And we've had some consolidation recently, if you've seen that. But NASA Artemis, NASA Marshall Space Flight Center for SLS being our home center. Great places. NASA's Kennedy Space Center, they're posting all kinds of cool stuff about where we are as far as stacking the vehicle. Keep an eye on our social media channels and our website, and that will be the best updates. And when we get a firm launch date, I'm sure there'll be a press conference, and we'll start kicking off a lot of press conferences and bring the astronauts out to talk with the media and the public more.
Right near the end, I saw an interesting picture of a crescent moon that's nearing first quarter stage, or either just past last quarter, and it had lots of stars around it. How'd you take that picture?
This one, I would have to check. My guess is that it is a compilation of a number of photos to highlight the moon and the stars.
Which I would call a glorious double exposure.
Absolutely. I will take your expertise on that. I am not a photo wizard. But yeah, it's a beautiful image. And Andrew does some great photo renderings.
So Tony wants to know, will Artemis use the Gateway Space Station?
Yeah, absolutely. So as the manifest currently sits, Gateway, it'll be put up in a few different launches. The power and propulsion element, along with the habitation and logistics module, They will launch on a commercial vehicle, I think sometime in the next year or two. And then with Artemis 4, we'll have an upgraded SLS variant that will allow us to carry astronauts in what we call a co-manifested payload. So we'll actually be launching astronauts to do surface operations and carrying a module of Gateway with us. So Gateway is absolutely important to the Artemis missions, giving us a way station in lunar orbit where 2 of our astronauts will stay and do science, and then 2 of the astronauts will descend to the surface. The other cool thing about Gateway is that we'll be able to do continual research. Much like on the International Space Station, we have our astronauts up there, but there are a lot of experiments that are run from the ground. We'll be able to do that with Gateway as well, so we can always be getting science out of Gateway in a very unique environment of the lunar vicinity.
Anybody else? All right, Will, let me take a second to say thank you, because you more than made up in your presentation for my lack of ability with technology this evening. And so I want to just personally tell you thank you on that one.
No, Dana, I appreciate it. It was my, I will tell you all, that was on me. I took a gamble. My internet decided that was gonna be the fun night to not work, and NASA systems don't like Zoom. So no, I just, once again, I greatly appreciate all the help getting everything set up, and really appreciate y'all as a club having me and allowing me to come tell a story about SLS and Artemis. And I always enjoy when I get to talk to y'all.
Absolutely. I think you need to come to North Carolina.
Hey, look, just don't tell my wife that I'm swinging by Charlotte and getting some swinging by all the NASCAR shops, all right?
Well, we've got some barbecue waiting if you head this way. So
you just said my 3 favorite letters.
All right. Well, I'm going to drop you off.